From the bustling cities of Europe to the remote islands of the Pacific, the world in the 1930s stood on the precipice of a storm. The scars of the First World War, a conflict that claimed millions of lives, were still fresh in the minds of many. Yet, from the ashes of that conflict, new tensions were rising, new ideologies were taking hold, and a new generation, unaware of the horrors to come, would soon face a world at war. World War II was one of the deadliest conflicts in history, lasting 6 years and involving most of the world's nations. It resulted in the deaths of over 70 million people and reshaped global politics. Join us now as we journey back in time to understand the causes, the events, and the enduring consequences of this global conflict, a conflict that would forever shape the world we know today. The seeds of the Second World War were sown in the aftermath of the First. The devastation left behind by World War I was immense, leaving Europe in ruins and its people in despair. The war had not only destroyed cities and lives, but also shattered the political and social fabric of the continent. The Treaty of Versailles, intended to bring lasting peace, instead sowed the seeds of resentment and instability. The treaty imposed harsh penalties on Germany, including significant territorial losses, military restrictions, and crippling reparations. These measures were meant to prevent future conflicts, but instead fostered a deep sense of injustice and anger among the German people. Germany, blamed for the war's devastation, was burdened with crippling reparations, territorial losses, and a deep sense of humiliation. The economic strain and national humiliation created fertile ground for radical ideologies to take root. The Weimar Republic, Germany's fragile democracy, struggled to maintain stability amidst economic turmoil and political extremism. This fertile ground allowed extremist ideologies to take root, most notably the Nazi Party led by the charismatic but deeply troubled Adolf Hitler. Hitler's message of national revival and vengeance against the perceived injustices of the Treaty of Versailles resonated with many Germans who felt betrayed and humiliated. Hitler, a master of propaganda and manipulation, exploited the economic hardships and nationalistic sentiments of the German people. The Great Depression of the 1930s further exacerbated Germany's economic woes, leading to widespread unemployment and poverty. Hitler promised to restore Germany to its former glory, to overturn the injustices of Versailles, and to create a 1,000-year Reich. He promised to restore Germany to its former glory, to overturn the injustices of Versailles, and to create a 1,000-year Reich. His vision of a powerful, unified Germany appealed to a nation desperate for hope and a return to strength. The Nazi Party's rise to power was swift and ruthless, as they eliminated political opposition and consolidated control over the state. His message resonated with a nation desperate for hope and a return to strength. The Nazi regime's propaganda machine worked tirelessly to promote Hitler's vision, using rallies, speeches, and media to galvanize public support. The German people, weary from years of hardship, were eager to believe in a brighter future. Across Europe, similar ideologies were gaining traction. The economic and political instability of the interwar period created an environment where authoritarian and nationalist movements could flourish. In many countries, people turned to strong leaders who promised order and stability. In Italy, Benito Mussolini had already established a fascist regime, emphasizing nationalism, militarism, and authoritarian rule. Mussolini's success inspired other fascist movements across Europe, further destabilizing the continent. The Spanish Civil War became a testing ground for the weapons and tactics that would soon engulf the continent. The conflict drew in international volunteers and foreign powers, serving as a prelude to the larger and more devastating war that was to come. Meanwhile, in the East, a resurgent Japan, driven by its own imperial ambitions, began expanding its influence in Asia. Japan's aggressive expansionism and militarization posed a significant threat to regional stability and foreshadowed the global conflict that was on the horizon. The League of Nations, formed after the First World War to prevent future conflicts, proved powerless to stop the rising tide of aggression. Despite its noble intentions, the League lacked the authority and military power to enforce its resolutions. Its pleas for diplomacy and collective security fell on deaf ears. The major powers were either unwilling or unable to take decisive action, allowing aggressor states to act with impunity. The world watched with a mixture of apprehension and indifference as the storm clouds gathered. Many hoped that the crises could be resolved through negotiation and compromise, but the reality was that the foundations for a new and even more destructive conflict were being laid. Few could have predicted the scale of the devastation that was about to be unleashed. The world was on the brink of a conflict that would reshape the course of history and leave an indelible mark on humanity. The fragile peace was shattered on September 1st, 1939, when German forces, with their blitzkrieg tactics of lightning warfare, stormed into Poland. The speed and ferocity of the attack caught the world off guard, demonstrating a new kind of warfare that combined air power, mechanized infantry, and rapid movement to devastating effect. Britain and France, bound by treaties to defend Poland's sovereignty, declared war on Germany, marking the beginning of World War II. This declaration was not just a formality. It signaled the start of a conflict that would engulf the entire globe and reshape the world order. What followed was a global conflict unlike any before it. Battles raged across Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, involving nations from every corner of the world. The scale and scope of the war were unprecedented, affecting millions of lives and altering the course of history. In Europe, the German war machine, fueled by Hitler's ambition and ruthlessness, swept across the continent. His vision of a greater Germany led to the occupation of numerous countries and the subjugation of their peoples. Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and finally France fell to the Nazi onslaught. Each invasion was meticulously planned and executed with brutal efficiency, leaving little room for resistance. Britain, standing alone against the Nazi war machine, endured the Blitz, a relentless bombing campaign that targeted civilian populations. Night after night, London and other cities were pounded by bombs, but the British spirit remained unbroken. In June 1941, Hitler, breaking his pact with Stalin, unleashed Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history against the Soviet Union. This marked a turning point in the war, as the Eastern Front became a battleground of epic proportions. The Eastern Front, stretching from the Arctic Circle to the Black Sea, became a theater of unimaginable brutality, a struggle for survival between two totalitarian regimes. The sheer scale of the conflict and the harsh conditions made it one of the most grueling fronts of the war. On December 7, 1941, the war reached the shores of America. The surprise attack by Japanese aircraft on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, was a devastating blow to the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Japanese aircraft in a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, devastated the U.S. Pacific Fleet, drawing the United States into the global conflict. This event galvanized the American public and marked the beginning of the United States' full-scale involvement in World War II. The world watched in horror as the fighting spread across the globe, from the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Southeast Asia. Each theater of war presented its own unique challenges and horrors, testing the limits of human endurance and ingenuity. Amidst the chaos and carnage, stories of courage and resilience emerged. Soldiers and civilians alike displayed extraordinary bravery, often in the face of overwhelming odds. These acts of heroism provided glimmers of hope in an otherwise dark time. The Battle of Britain, fought in the skies above England, showcased the bravery of the Royal Air Force pilots who faced overwhelming odds. Their determination and skill were crucial in preventing a German invasion of Britain. The siege of Leningrad, lasting for 900 days, became a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure unimaginable suffering. Despite the severe shortages of food and supplies, the people of Leningrad held out against the German forces. On the beaches of Normandy on June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history, marking the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. The success of this operation was a turning point in the war, leading to the liberation of occupied Europe. The liberation of Europe had begun. As Allied forces advanced, they freed city after city from Nazi control, bringing hope and relief to millions who had suffered under occupation. The tide of the war was turning, and the end of the conflict was in sight. After 6 long years of global conflict, the guns finally fell silent in 1945. The world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the horrors of war came to an end. The celebrations were a testament to the resilience and hope of humanity, even in the face of such overwhelming adversity. The world, exhausted and scarred, emerged from the ashes of war, forever changed by the experience. Cities that once stood as symbols of culture and progress were now shadows of their former selves, bearing the deep wounds of conflict. The human cost of the conflict was staggering. Families were torn apart and communities were decimated. The sheer scale of the loss was almost incomprehensible, leaving a void that would take generations to heal. Over 70 million people, both combatants and civilians, perished in the fighting, victims of battles, bombings, disease, and genocide. The war's brutality left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of humanity. Entire cities lay in ruins, their once vibrant streets reduced to rubble. The destruction was not just physical but also emotional, as the very fabric of society was torn apart. The economies of nations were shattered, and millions were left homeless and displaced. The task of rebuilding seemed insurmountable, yet the human spirit proved resilient, determined to rise from the devastation. The horrors of the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of 6 million Jews by the Nazi regime, shocked the world and exposed the depths of human depravity. This dark chapter in history serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of hatred and intolerance. From the ashes of war, a new world order emerged. Nations came together, determined to prevent such a catastrophe from ever happening again. The seeds of international cooperation were sown in the hope of a more peaceful future. Germany, defeated and divided, faced a long road to atonement and reconstruction. The division of the country symbolized the broader ideological rift that would shape global politics for decades. The United States and the Soviet Union, once allies against fascism, emerged as superpowers, their rivalry shaping the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. This new era, known as the Cold War, brought its own set of challenges and tensions. The United Nations, formed in 1945, represented a renewed hope for international cooperation and the peaceful resolution of conflicts. It was a beacon of hope in a world still reeling from the devastation of war. The horrors of World War II served as a stark reminder of the need for diplomacy, dialogue, and understanding between nations. The lessons learned from this dark period continue to shape our approach to international relations today. The war also accelerated technological advancements. Innovations that were born out of necessity during the conflict would go on to have far-reaching impacts on civilian life. The development of radar, jet engines, antibiotics, and the atomic bomb had a profound impact on the post-war world, shaping everything from military strategy to medicine and communications. These advancements, while beneficial, also brought new ethical and moral dilemmas that we continue to grapple with today. World War II was one of the most devastating events in human history, bringing about enormous political and geographical changes. It was a conflict that tested the limits of human endurance, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the devastating consequences of hatred and intolerance. Yet from the ashes of destruction, a new world emerged, a world shaped by the lessons learned and determined to forge a better future. The war also ushered in a new era of technological advancement, but it also left an indelible mark on the human psyche. The memories of those who lived through the conflict serve as a constant reminder of the importance of tolerance, understanding, and the preservation of peace. As we remember the sacrifices made and the lessons learned, let us strive to create a world where such horrors are never repeated, a world where dialogue and diplomacy prevail, and where peace reigns supreme.